From the icy University District, this is your Daily Detroit, recorded on February 6th, 2019. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Let's get into it after a word from our sponsor. Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by Bamboo Detroit. With an inclusive community, flexible modern offices, classes, and networking events, Bamboo Detroit helps entrepreneurs and innovative companies launch, land, or expand in Detroit. Become one of more than 400 members today at bamboodetroit.com.
We have a little more clarity on the cost of fixing Michigan's roads today. Paul Ajegba is Governor Gretchen Whitmer's nominee to lead the Michigan Department of Transportation. During an hour-and-a-half-long state Senate committee hearing, he said, "We're looking at another $1.5 billion per year just to fix the state's highways. And that doesn't even count local counties or cities."
But didn't we already spend a bunch of money on roads? Well, we're going to get into the weeds here, friends, but I think it's pretty important. So yes, the state approved $1.2 billion a year in road funding back in 2015. But here's why that money was nowhere near enough, beyond the fact it doesn't fully kick in until 2021. A law from 1951, nearly 70 years ago, mandates how road funding is spent regardless of where the actual need is. It was a time when gas taxes brought in more dollars as cars were less fuel efficient. Off the top, as much as 10% of the money goes to paying off other state departments for services, including the state police and the Department of State. The rest of the money has to be distributed through a hard formula. MDOT gets about 39% of the money through a fund to fix major freeways and state roads. County road commissions divide another 39% across the state, and cities and villages split up the remaining 22%. So now that we know this, let's get back to that $1.2 billion the state voted for in 2015. Ajegba says MDOT at the time said it needed $1.2 billion just for its portion. What they actually got was a plan totaling $1.2 billion, again, with the money not fully implemented until 2021, split three ways. That's according to that formula I just told you about. This leaves a huge hole. Politicians ended up taking credit for a deal, and at the same time, they kicked the can down the proverbial road. Now we're staring at an even larger bill as the roads have deteriorated further, and we've only been able to afford partial fixes. Ajegba noted that since the roads package was approved in 2015, 20% of the roads MDOT oversees have fallen into poor condition. Governor Whitmer is expected to unveil a road funding plan later this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
General Motors is once again back in the news. The automaker has notified the state of Michigan it plans to lay off nearly 1,300 salaried workers at its Warren Technical Center. It's part of plans we told you about earlier this week to slash more than 4,000 salaried employees. The layoffs in Warren will continue until February 28th.
GM says those people receiving layoff notices at the tech center will receive pay and benefits through April 9th. As with layoffs elsewhere, GM tells the state that several companies have expressed interest in interviewing the laid-off employees for job openings. GM is aiming to cut its global salaried and hourly workforce by around 14,000 positions. Those plans include trimming its executive ranks by 25% and ending production at 5 North American plants. The company says it needs to free up capital to transition to a future focused on developing electric vehicles and self-driving cars.
Separately, GM on Wednesday said it made $2.1 billion in the fourth quarter, and it closed out 2018 with $8.1 billion in profits, based on strong sales of crossovers and trucks. The company reported having $3.8 billion in automotive cash flow for the full year.
You know, in a lot of ways, this is kind of a crazy story. One of the things that I noted was pretty interesting, I've been hearing from multiple sources and friends about yellow cabs and the like lined up at the GM Tech Center in Warren and other facilities.
And the Renson too, you said?
Yeah. Again, I wasn't able to verify that. I was able to verify the Tech Center that these cabs were lined up because all these people were handing in their company cars. So not only did they lose their job, they lost their car too. And if you live in Metro Detroit, you don't have a car. It's really hard to do anything around here.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe that's silver lining. Maybe that's good news for certified pre-owned customers looking to get in a GM vehicle. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because these are relative good times. I mean, I just told you, they made more than $8 billion for the entire 2018. That's up, and it provided at least a brief boost in their stock price. And GM's UAW workers, the company just said today, are also getting a $10,750 profit sharing checks. So it's hard to square some of these things for sure.
Yeah, and they got $80,000 or something like that since 2010 in profit sharing checks. So there's been money coming into UAW workers. And another thing I wanted to notice too is that there's so much talk about electrical vehicles, but it seems like the money is where the trucks are at. I know that electric vehicles are down the line and that's what everyone's talking about, but the money and the profits, that's coming from those trucks. And the company General Motors said the Silverado launch was, and I quote them directly, flawless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked, I think, yesterday about their plans to hire 1,000 employees up in Flint, where they're building the heavy-duty versions of the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra. I mean, these are just like cash cows for them, right? And they want to use them to, build up war chest to fund, electric vehicles and autonomous. I mean, Ford's essentially doing the same thing. They've said, we need to get into this, but for now, we need to lean heavily on our cash cows to fund it all. So, there's a lot to shake out here, and it's clear that the future is looking very disruptive for a lot of auto companies. A Detroit police commander who ran the 3rd Precinct retired Tuesday after being charged with operating while impaired and with a blood alcohol content above 0.17. Former DPD Commander Johnny Thomas is accused of crashing a department vehicle into a truck at a stoplight while impaired. A third vehicle was also struck but left the scene. For Thomas, the high blood alcohol charge could carry a 180-day jail sentence misdemeanor if found guilty. He was also charged with possession of a firearm while under the influence. That's a 93-day misdemeanor. Thomas's lawyer entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. He's currently out on a $5,000 10% bond. The 3rd Precinct is based in the New Center at Grand Boulevard and the Lodge. Thomas had 20 years of service. He formerly ran the department's internal affairs unit.
The former Macomb County politician who was convicted of more than a dozen corruption charges was sentenced to 17 years in federal prison. Former Clinton Township trustee Dean Reynolds will also have to pay $15,000 in fines for his role in running 4 bribery schemes. The Detroit News reports it's one of the longest corruption sentences ever delivered in Metro Detroit's history. It's also the longest sentence issued to date in a political scandal that has produced federal charges against 22 contractors and public officials and led to 17 convictions. We'll link to the full Detroit News story in the show notes.
Sad story here, as former longtime Congressman John Dingell has entered hospice care. Family members have told local media that the 92-year-old Dearborn Democrat was diagnosed a year ago with prostate cancer that had metastasized, but Dingell had decided against treating it. Dingell retired from Congress in 2015 as the longest-serving member of Congress after serving 59 years in the House. He was succeeded by his wife, Debbie Dingell, who stayed at home with her husband Tuesday night instead of being in Washington for the State of the Union address. She took to Twitter on Wednesday to say, in part, "I am home with John and we have entered a new phase. He is my love and we have been a team for nearly 40 years. She asks supporters to give them privacy and prayers during a difficult time.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Milo Digital. Milo Digital is a full-service digital marketing agency that engineers quality results through data and innovative strategies. Learn more at milodetroit.com. All right, this is a fun one. Chris Pratt has appeared on shows like Parks and Recreation and movies including Guardians of the Galaxy. And he gave a little shout out to Wayne State University's psychology department yesterday on Twitter with the WSU department mascot Siggy and student Rachel Zelenak.
Hi, I'm Chris Pratt. I love Wayne State University. What's that? Sigmund says that has something to do with my mother.
The shout out happened in New York, where Zelenak is going through chemotherapy to treat cancer at the Ronald McDonald House. By the way, you can follow Rachel on Twitter at @RZelenak. And FYI, we here at Daily Detroit think your smile is awesome.
The Downtown Detroit Partnership unveiled its annual report today, outlining their view of progress being made in Detroit's central business district. CEO Eric Larson says downtown Detroit is more vibrant today than at any point since the late 1940s. Here are a few high-level numbers from the nonprofit, which coordinates activities in the area roughly defined by the Detroit River, the Lodge, I-75, and I-375. The DDP says the average rent downtown is now $1,450 a month. That's up about $100 from 2 years ago. More than 600 new residential units are due to come online in the next year, and the rental vacancy rate is just 6%. For context, the average rental rate in Metro Detroit is now a little more than $1,000 a month. The DDP says that more than 2.5 million people visited downtown's parks in 2018, a new record that includes 260,000 visits to the new Beacon Park on Grand River Avenue. For the holidays, crews installed more than 460,000 LED lights for the new winter lighting program. The DDP also launched a recycling program at Cadillac Square with plans to expand it across downtown. And finally, on the crime side, there was an 8% drop in robberies and 18% drop in auto thefts. Interestingly, there were 44% fewer auto accidents in downtown Detroit.
I wonder if that has anything to do with their new walkable plans. They've been shifting a lot of things downtown. I mean, we're down there quite often. There's a lot more that's set up for bicyclists and pedestrians than just for cars. If you think about all the things they've reworked, think about that intersection there at Gratiot and Randolph over there that was actually like one of the most deadly pedestrian intersections in the state.
I got in a traffic accident there once, not pedestrian, but traffic accident there once, yes.
Yeah, it was a poorly designed place.
Very much so. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the studies consistently show that, when you calm traffic, it has a huge knock-on effect on pedestrian safety. Okay, friends, before we go, wanted to make sure to thank our newest member, Alan Patterson. Alan, your support helps keep this place going. You can too if you visit patreon.com/Daily Detroit. So thanks so much, everyone, for listening. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.